Have you ever looked at a missing person case and thought, wait, something doesn't add up here? Because in the disappearance of 4-year-old Gus Lamont, there is one part of the timeline that still doesn't make logical sense, and to this day, nobody has been able to properly explain it. A child disappears in a place he knows well. Hundreds of searchers comb the land for weeks. Dams drained. Mine shafts searched. Military, volunteers, police, yet not a single trace. No footprints. No clothing. No direction of travel. Nothing. And when we break down the timeline carefully, minute by minute, we reach a point where everything simply stops making sense. A silent gap, a window of time where Gus is gone, but there is no evidence showing where he went, how far, or with whom. Before we continue, please like this video, subscribe, and drop a comment because this story deserves more eyes and more discussion. Every interaction helps push awareness further, and the more people talk, the more pressure remains on finding answers. Now, let's go deep into the timeline itself, and you will see where the confusion begins. To understand where the story breaks, we need to start with what is confirmed, the parts everyone agrees on. It was a normal day on the property. No storms. No major events. Nothing publicly reported as unusual. At some point during the day, Gus was at Oak Park Station, a remote sheep property in South Australia. This is where he lived with close family members. The environment, the land, the space, he was familiar with it. Later in the afternoon, police reports and public information state that Gus was seen playing outside, specifically, on a mound of dirt near the homestead. He wasn't alone at the property. His grandmother was nearby, watching over him while inside the home managing tasks and caring for his younger sibling. For up to that moment, everything seems simple, understandable, normal. But what follows is where timelines become blurry. Because after this sighting, Gus is never seen again. Not by family. Not by neighbors. Not by search teams. Not by trackers. And that moment sets the stage for the most confusing part of this case. Now we enter the most haunting part of this case, the 30-minute window. It's such a short amount of time. Yet within that half hour, a child vanished so completely that search teams, helicopters, thermal drones, tracking dogs, and hundreds of people found nothing. Let's break this window down carefully. What should have happened in that time? In 30 minutes, realistically a 4-year-old could wander around the immediate yard, explore nearby bushes or paddocks, follow an animal, try to find his mother, or simply sit and play. Even if he walked non-stop, a child his size would cover only a small radius. Searchers combed far beyond that area. So why no footprints, no dropped item, no piece of clothing? Nothing shows clear movement. It's almost like there's a missing step, a missing event, or a missing witness. Was something happening during that window? This is where theories start forming, not accusations, just possibilities. 1. He wandered off earlier than believed. Maybe the starting point in the timeline is wrong. Did he disappear before the 30-minute mark without being noticed? 2. He followed something, or someone. An animal, a familiar voice, a person leaving the property? 3. He was taken quickly and quietly. Hard to achieve without tracks, but not impossible if a vehicle was involved. 4. He hid or fell somewhere difficult to detect. But even then, weeks of searching should have revealed something. 5. The scene changed before or after anyone noticed. A detail misunderstood? A sound not recognized as significant? Again, not blaming anyone, but in cases like this, timing is everything. And here, that time block is a black hole. Why does this 30-minute gap stand out so much? Because every theory collapses against the same wall. No trail. No evidence. No signs of distress. No confirmed direction of movement. Searchers said it was like he vanished into thin air. And whenever a case has a gap like this, a moment where nobody saw, heard, or recorded anything, investigators look there first. Because somewhere inside that half hour lies the decision Gus made, or the moment someone else made one for him. As we move forward, we need to visualize the environment where this disappearance took place, because the landscape itself is a character in this story. This wasn't a suburban neighborhood, not a busy street, not a park full of witnesses. It was open land, rugged bush, dams, thick scrub, and rural terrain that stretches for kilometers. Beautiful, but dangerous. Open, yet unforgiving. Why this location complicates everything. On one hand, a vast property makes wandering extremely plausible. Kids follow animals, water, interesting objects. Sometimes they walk further than adults assume. But here's the strange part. See scoured creeks, dams, fences. Drones used thermal imaging. Helicopters scanned treetops and paddocks. Horses rode deep bush trails. Trackers examined soil for prints. Even a dam was drained. And still, no clothing, no footprints, no drag marks, no scent trail long enough to follow. If he walked, he should have left a trace. Children leave signs, broken twigs, disturbed dirt, dropped toys, clothing catching on branches. But this case produced nothing. Could he have left the property entirely? For a child that age to walk off the land unnoticed would require perfect timing, an unobserved route, and no one spotting him along the way. Yet if he was taken off-site, it raises a new question. How did someone access and exit the property without being noticed? Rural land isn't like a city street, cars stand out. A stranger stands out even more. Either scenario leaves us with problems. If he walked, no evidence. If he was taken, how so quietly? Why investigators pay attention to terrain? Because landscape shapes possibility. And here, the landscape suggests one of two extreme outcomes. 1. He left the immediate search area faster than expected. Possible, but unlikely without tracks. 2. Something removed him from the landscape, which would explain the lack of trace. Neither answer is comfortable. But one of them must be true, unless there's a third, yet undiscovered scenario. This is where the case becomes unsettling, because disappearances usually leave something. A footprint. A piece of clothing. A dropped toy. A scent trail. Anything. But with Gus, the search teams found nothing. How big was this search? Not a casual walk around. Not a few volunteers with flashlights. We're talking one of the most extensive rural searches in recent memory. Seized teams on foot. Police ground units. Thermal drones scanning day and night. Helicopters sweeping kilometers of bush. Horses and trail experts. Sniffer dogs brought in multiple times. A dam drained completely. Mine shafts and old wells inspected. Locals forming search grids across huge distances. Hundreds of people, professional trackers, and machinery, all focused on one missing child. Yet after days of effort, silence. No drag marks. No disturbed ground. No abandoned clothing. Dogs lost the scent early. What does a search like this normally produce? Even in the toughest missing child cases, teams usually find torn fabric from branches, mud prints, food wrappers, footprints around water sources, items dropped from panic or fatigue, scent trails lasting hours to days. But here, zero. It's rare, extremely rare, for a child to vanish in nature without leaving behind even the smallest sign of presence. Which leads investigators, and us, to one chilling possibility. Was Gus ever in those search areas by the time crews arrived? If not, how did he leave them? Why this moment changed the investigation? When professionals search bushland and come up empty, it means one of three things. 1. He traveled much farther, much faster than expected. Developmentally unusual for his age. 2. Search teams somehow missed evidence. Possible, but with this scale, unlikely. 3. He was no longer within the search zone very early on. voluntary or involuntary, both raise new questions. Whatever happened, it happened quickly, within a short window. Which brings us to perhaps the most critical part of this story. Most discussions start from the moment Gus went missing. But what if the key is before he disappeared? Because in many missing persons cases, especially involving children, investigators often shift focus backward, asking, what was happening in the hours before the vanishing? And this case has one detail that keeps resurfacing. That morning on the property. On the day Gus vanished, his mother and another family member were reportedly 10 kilometers away, searching for sheep. Gus remained at home with his grandmother. It was described as an ordinary day, routine, calm, nothing unusual. But was it really ordinary? Locals have said there may have been movement around the property earlier. Small comments. Pieces that never made official statements. Nothing confirmed, but whispers often start from something. Why this matters? If the timeline we all know only begins at the moment he was last seen, then we're potentially missing half the story. Something before the disappearance could have distressed him, confused him, motivated him to wander, involved someone visiting, caused a change in routine, shifted adult attention or movement. Even a disagreement, loud noise, or emotional moment could have triggered a child's instinct to follow, hide, or look for someone. And remember, his mother was away. Kids sometimes wander trying to find the person they feel attached to most. Could Gus have tried to follow her trail earlier than assumed, long before people noticed? If so, the 30-minute gap becomes a misleading timeline, and the real window could be much larger. Which would explain why searches found nothing. Because they searched where he was believed to be, not necessarily where he actually went. Now the case reaches the point where theories divide sharply. If he wandered, why no trail? If he left earlier, why didn't anyone see? If someone picked him up, who, and when? All of that unfolds in the next section. Up to this point, everything hinges on when Gus actually left the yard. Because if the accepted 30-minute window isn't accurate, then every assumption, every search zone, every theory may be based on the wrong starting point. This is the question investigators must be considering behind the scenes. What if Gus disappeared earlier than everyone thinks? Let's explore why this possibility could change everything. The grandmother last saw him playing outside. She returned later, and he was gone. That's the last confirmed sighting. But no one saw him during the interval. Meaning the disappearance could have happened before, not during, that 30 minutes. If he walked away 10 minutes earlier, or even an hour before, the entire search radius shifts dramatically. He could have already moved far beyond expected range. Why this matters so much? Small children walking continuously can cover surprising distance, especially in terrain without obstacles. But here's the twist. No footprints. No objects. No trace. This leads to 3 logical paths. 1. He wandered, but earlier than believed search perimeter was too small. 2. He was picked up or approached by someone explains lack of physical trace. 3. Something happened on the property earlier in the day timelines may not reflect reality. We're not accusing anyone, but investigators always analyze communication between adults that day, movements of everyone present, vehicle activity, phone signals, inconsistencies in statements, behavior changes before/after the moment he vanished. Because often, the truth is hidden not in what's said, but in what's not said. Could something before the disappearance be the key? Imagine scenarios. He overheard his mother was away and tried to find her. He followed an animal, children often do. Someone arrived unexpectedly, and he got curious. A small incident occurred, unnoticed but impactful. A vehicle passed, and he approached. One tiny detail could rewrite the entire case. This is the moment where theories begin to split wide open. At this stage in the story, we hit a wall. Because every popular theory collapses under its own weight. Let's break them down one by one. Theory 1, he wandered off alone. Sounds simple, logical, but then. No tracks. No clothes. No dropped toy. No trail for the dogs. Zero physical proof of direction. In vast outback terrain, even a lost adult leaves signs. A 4-year-old? Even more likely. Yet there was nothing. If he walked far, why wasn't anything found? If he didn't walk far, where did he go? Theory 2, he fell into water. The dam was drained. Millions of liters removed. Result? Empty. No evidence. No remains. If that was the cause, there should have been something. Anything. But again, nothing. Theory 3, he fell down a mine shaft. Dozens of shafts searched. Every accessible one checked. No clothing fibers. No shoe. No remains. And experts say a fall of that nature often leaves traceable material. So if not the dam, not the shafts, not the open land, where does that leave us? Theory 4, someone took him. This one scares people the most. Because it means intent. But then the obvious question rises. How does someone reach him unseen, remove him silently, leave no trace, and vanish faster than the search began? No tire tracks confirmed. No witnesses. No reports. Unless, the opportunity existed before the search window. In a moment not accounted for. Which loops us back to the timeline problem. This is why people say, the moment the story stops making sense is right here. All 4 main theories, the only logical ones, hit the same brick wall. Total absence of trace. Total silence. Total vanish. Cases don't behave like this unless 1. The timeline is wrong, or 2. Something happened that nobody has acknowledged, or 3. An action occurred off property or earlier than believed. And that uncertainty is what keeps the public talking. Here's the part that truly haunts this case. The moment no journalist, no headline, no press release has been able to logically bridge the silence between the last confirmed sighting of Gus and the moment they realized he was gone. Not just the 30 minutes, but the exact minute-to-minute gap inside that window. Because for a child to disappear without a trace, one of these must be true. He left earlier than believed. He left quietly and without being seen. He was taken with precision. Or something happened before anyone realized something was wrong. And none of those explanations sit neatly inside the official timeline. Let's focus on the single question nobody can answer. What happened between the last time he was seen playing and the moment someone walked outside and discovered the silence? A child playing makes noise. A child walking, crying, wandering, creates disturbance. But this wasn't noise. This was absence. A sudden, perfect absence. No barking dogs. No distressed calls. No broken branches. No trail. Just gone. Like a page torn clean out of the day. Why is this moment such a problem? Because cases involving children almost always leave clues. A footprint, a toy, a direction of travel. But here, investigators found nothing to follow. It's as if the timeline contains a black hole, a missing piece, a silent event. And without understanding what happened inside that gap, every theory remains incomplete. It's the kind of detail that makes people say, something about this story isn't adding up. Alright, we've laid out the facts, the timeline gaps, the search that turned up nothing, and that silent window where everything changed. But now, I want to hand this to you. Because cases like this don't move forward through silence. They move through questions, discussion, theories. So tell me, do you think Gus wandered off looking for his mother? Could someone have picked him up without being seen? Or did something happen before that 30-minute window even started? There is one missing piece in this timeline. And sometimes, it's the public who notices what investigators overlook. I'll be reading every single comment. Drop your thoughts, your theories, even your wild guesses. And if you followed the story this far, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next deep dive in this case. Because we're not done. Not even close. The Gus Lamont disappearance still has unanswered questions. And we'll keep digging until something makes sense.